Hello. Today I'm sharing with you the story of Samuel, and he's another character in our season of sharing about Old Testament heroes and kind of going back to the beginning of Jesus's family tree, so to speak, and following along from the very beginning, from creation all the way through Genesis and the Old Testament, to lead the way toward our preparation for Christmas during Advent. So the story of Samuel is not in isolation. It comes as we've been studying all the way back to Abraham and Sarah and Jacob and Esau, of course Isaac before them, and going on to Moses. In fact, either last week or next week they'll be studying about Moses, and so it really draws a great connection between Moses's journey to the Promised Land and what happened after the people were living in the Promised Land. So the story that we speak about mentions the Ark of the Covenant, which held the Ten Commandments. And when we studied Moses, or when we talk about Moses next week, depending on the class, we'll talk about Moses's time on Mount Sinai and how he brought back the Ten Commandments and all that happened surrounding that story. But it will also mention the work and the time that Moses put into bringing the people to the Promised Land, but the understanding that he would not go to the Promised Land, he would see the Promised Land, and then he died. So we talked about that in the story of Moses, or you can allude to the fact that that's going to be a topic coming up very soon. So we talk about Samuel. He's part of this long family tree, this long history of all the people of God that have been pushing and pulling and learning how to honor God, learning how to honor one another. And this is a continuation of that long, difficult, and in many ways triumphant story. But again, a reminder throughout how much we need salvation and how much how patient God is and how loving God is despite everything. So as I share about Eli and Samuel, there is one part that may be a little difficult for the younger children. When it talks about Eli's sons dying, I wouldn't spend too much time talking about that or trying to answer a lot of questions about that. Just suffice it to say that they're not around anymore, and this was part of the story of what was going to happen because of the choices that Eli had made. And it's more important that we focus on the prophecy of Samuel than that we focus on the details of how Eli's sons died. All right, so that's a little caveat for you. Keep in mind this is back to the regular school year schedule, so they'll be with you the entire service. And as they arrive, I would definitely spend a little bit of time getting to know them, talking with them, learning their names. It will make the whole class run more smoothly if you know them a little bit better. Feel absolutely comfortable once that kind of conversational time is beginning. If you notice that there are certain students that would benefit from sitting separately, it is your prerogative and you have the authority to do that. All you need to say is, come sit over here, you come sit over here, and they should honor that and sit wherever you choose if it kind of will help with the conversational issues, especially with those older kids. Sometimes they sit next to a buddy and they start talking, and there will be a time for talking, just not during the lesson. So as you're getting to know the kids, kind of get a feel for their personality types. I often take a moment to go around the circle and share something. Perhaps as we're getting closer and closer to the fall, you might ask questions related to fall. You might ask them about their plans for Halloween, which of course is still a ways away, but they start planning early. You might ask them how school's going, but this is an opportunity for you to serve them and to pastor them in this kind of introductory time. And it also gives you time for everyone to arrive, so you haven't begun the lesson and someone comes in and misses something. So, alrighty, I hope that's helpful. And I'll begin the story. I'm going to move the camera down so that you can see the different pieces of the story. So, okay. All right, friends. Today, we're telling a story about someone that lived a very long time ago. Someone named Samuel. You might have a friend named Samuel. You might know somebody named Sam or Sammy. It's a very important name. Many people like this name because this name means given by God. So it's a wonderful name, and it helps us to understand where Samuel came from. But let's think back a little farther. The family of God has been living in the Promised Land, and the family of God has traveled and traveled and traveled. They were slaves in Egypt. They were brought out of slavery into freedom. They wandered the desert for many, many, many years with Moses as their guide. They triumphantly broke down the walls at Jericho by marching and marching and marching. They moved into the Promised Land, and they had been traveling in the Promised Land for many years, even still. So it had been a long time. And one of the things that they brought with them as they traveled was the Ark of the Covenant. They carried it with them everywhere. Do you remember what's inside the Ark of the Covenant? It's a very special carrying box. Something special to bring with them wherever they went. Inside are the 10 Commandments, or those stones that Moses had written on when he spoke to God, the stones that listed the 10 best ways that we can live our lives, the 10 best things that we can do to honor God and to love each other well and to make the right choices so that we can live in freedom. God sent these special rules, these special ideas through Moses. And even though Moses had died, the people continued to carry them wherever they went, to make sure that they wouldn't forget, to make sure that they could have the ideas with them, but even to carry the presence of God with them. Because God had helped them create this box, it reminded them that God was with them. Just like we come into a church, they didn't have a church building that they could carry with them, but they had this special box, the Ark of the Covenant. Now, as they traveled through the mountains, they traveled to a place called Shiloh. And there they put up a tent to hold the ark, to protect the ark in Shiloh. And then the people of God settled in the hills around the ark. They stopped there to live. The ark was protected, and the people were around it. 2 of the people that lived in this place, Hannah and Elkanah, they lived in Ramah, which is a different town, but not far from the ark, not far from where it was. And each year they came to Shiloh to pray. They wanted to be near the ark to pray, so they came every year. Now, Hannah wanted to be a mother so very much, but she had no children of her own. One year she prayed and prayed so deeply in front of the tent. She just prayed and prayed and prayed so much and so passionately that one of the priests began to worry. And Eli came close to where Hannah was to see if he could help. He asked Hannah, "What is it?" Hannah was there praying and begging God, "Please, may I have a child. Please, may I have a family." Well, when Eli asked her, she told him that she was praying to God to help her have a baby. So Eli joined her, and he prayed too, and they prayed together. Well, Hannah and her husband, Elkanah, did have a baby. At last, they named him Samuel. They named him Samuel because Samuel meant given by God. And Samuel was a gift from God. Hannah had prayed and begged God to please give her a child, and he did. He gave her a child. And so they named him Samuel. Well, Samuel grew up. He got older. Look at that little coat. This little boy grew up. And he got, oh, here's the littlest one. Here's a little bit bigger. Here he is, getting bigger and bigger. Each year he needs a new coat, just like you. Growing up. And when he had gotten old enough, Hannah and Elkanah brought Samuel to Shiloh, brought him back to the place where the tent and the ark were. And they went to see Eli. But this time, they brought Samuel, who was now all grown up. They brought him to live with Eli near the ark. And Eli would take care of Samuel, and Samuel would learn to take care of the ark, because that was one of Eli's special jobs. He got to teach Samuel now how to do it, how to take care of the ark and protect those special words of God. And each time Hannah came to see him in Shiloh, she always brought him a new coat to wear. Every year, his mother came to see him, his father too, to hug him, to look at him, to pray with him, and to see all the good work that he was doing. While he stayed there with Eli, Samuel slept on a simple bed, just a mat. You might even think of it like a sleeping bag. And while Samuel was asleep one day on his mat, he heard a voice calling to him. It was God's voice, and it said, "Samuel, Samuel, Samuel." And of course, Samuel woke up. He thought it was Eli calling him, so of course he went to talk to Eli. Now, Eli had not called him. We know it was God that called him. So Eli said to Samuel, "Go back to bed." This happened 3 more times. "Samuel, Samuel." "Yes, it wasn't me." "Samuel, Samuel." "Yes, it wasn't me." "Samuel, Samuel." "Yes, it wasn't me." Each time Eli told him it wasn't me, but the 3rd time, Eli thought, it must be God calling Samuel. So he told Samuel, "Go back, lie down on your mat, and if you hear the voice again, say, 'Speak, God, for your servant